Hello.
Everyone.
So let me share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen? I'm sharing the meeting notes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I didn't put this on the agenda, but the sampler from a couple of weeks ago, the one that we migrated, I could use a review on that one in the contrib repo sometime.
Okay. Yeah.
I can link it.
I think there were like a couple of new PRs in the contrib repo, which requires review. I mean, there are 5 open pull requests.
I mean, this one
Azure application site sampler. Okay.
Yeah, I think you guys have all looked at this one before, just like in other repos. So it's the same thing.
Okay, let's give it another minute to see if anyone else wants to join. And meanwhile, you can put your name in the attendees list. So the first item in the agenda, we really need someone else other than Microsoft folks. Right, Riley?
Yeah, I want to see if Michael could join. If not, I can briefly explain this and get some idea here, but I'll definitely need to get back to Michael and see if that sounds correct. Should we wait or?
Yeah, let's give like 1 more minute.
Okay.
No one shows up, then we can just like get a brief summary of what you want to discuss and then end early. Hey, Alan.
Maybe Alan got some technical issue, so he joined and then it's not here anymore. Okay, here's Alan again.
Oh, sorry.
Hi.
Zoom issues.
Hear you now. Okay. Yeah, I think it should be fine for us to start now. It's 3 minutes past 4. So really, I'll let you go for the first one in the agenda.
Yeah, this is basically Michael was trying to change something in this repo, which is under ASP.NET. And I started to have questions. I talk with Cyril and say, it seems in the OpenTelemetry instrumentation library, we have some dependency here, and anything under ASP.NET in general would take much longer time. And by quickly looking through the code, I can see it has nothing specific to Microsoft. So it might be a good idea if we can move that to the OpenTelemetry community and try to remove any Microsoft specific thing to make it vendor agnostic. So to welcome other contributions and also make it more widely adopted by the other components. So I talked with Cyril, he told me it seems to be a good idea. So I talked with Michael and he likes the idea. And then I talked with the ASP.NET team and got their okay. So from legal part, we're clean. And both this repo and our OpenTelemetry projects are under Apache 2 license, so we don't have any license issue. And I also gave heads up to the maintainers meeting this Monday and got good to go signal. So I want to move to the next step, but here I want to quickly go through, this is what I'm thinking and get some feedback. And ultimately, I need to get some feedback from Michael, but he's not here. So I just want to go through the proposal here, see what's the feedback from folks here. And then based on what we discussed, I need to follow up with Michael offline. So the first question, sorry, if there's any question before I I go to the list of questions I have.
Refresh my memory. So would this just enable like further development for ASP.NET instrumentation, or is this package broader in its what it does?
This is just a small adapter which is used by the ASP.NET instrumentation in OpenTelemetry. And if you look at the code, it's fairly straightforward. It just takes some signal and convert that to another format that we need.
It's just an HTTP module which publishes the diagnostic source events. So the instrumentation in OpenTelemetry.NET repo just enables this module and then reads the diagnostic source events and then like populates the activity and exports. So this is like a dependency of the instrumentation currently.
Yeah, okay, I remember this context. Oh, and
Oh, yeah, Michael joined. So
Michael joined. Yeah, I was just going through the context. I think Michael knows the context. So if there's no more question, I can just go to explain the questions and we can discuss what's the best thing we can have. So the first question is, we're going to make the contribution. Should that be in the OpenTelemetry.NET repo or should that be in the contrib repo? And my proposal would be it should be in .NET repo because we have ASP.NET instrumentation library taking dependency. And it doesn't make sense for something to be in the contrib and then from the OpenTelemetry.NET we take a reference to the contrib repo. So that's my suggestion.
an alternate option would be to move both to the contrib repo, like move ASP.NET itself,
Yeah,
the instrumentation library itself to the contrib repo. This was something we discussed like sometime in the past, but we never actually did anything. But that's still possible for us to like lift and shift all the instrumentations from the main repo to the contrib repo.
yeah. I would prefer to leave that as a separate topic. We can do that later. But just for this scope, I want us to be able to focus on this very thing.
Okay, so if we are like, since it has since the ASP.NET instrumentation has a dependency on this package, and ASP.NET is currently in the main repo, we should make this part of the main repo.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone see like have different opinion?
Would we make it like, what would we call its version? Like, would it be like 1.0? Or would it be just following the other instrumentations in this? Because there is no reason, there is no connection that package has with OpenTelemetry, so it can be like called stable right away because it's already stable from.
We'll cover that later. We'll cover that later. I have the next question.
Okay.
So the second question is, should this be a separate library or it should be just part of the instrumentation library? And my proposal would be we keep it as a separate library because I know there are other components which take dependency on this, and I can see there are other components that might not be ready to move to OpenTelemetry yet. And over time, I think the moment we start to have better confidence, we can seek to combine the logic into the instrumentation library. But at least for now, I have less confidence on that, which means we'll keep this as a separate package and some other component that take existing dependency on the ASP.NET, like telemetry correlation package can move over. And once they move over, depending on whether like people, like the feedback, people are willing to merge that into a single component, we can decide next step. But I wouldn't start by merging the logic into one single instrumentation library for now.
That sounds good.
And then we can talk about the steps. So my proposal would be, I want us to be able to keep some history, like any history that happened already in that repo. I think it doesn't make too much sense to keep that, especially some of the like the people who committed, like who contribute to that repo, they might not be willing to have their name showing up in OpenTelemetry. This is a donation. So I think it might make sense to ignore that history. But anything happened after that, I want to keep the history. So I would propose that first we create a separate branch, and I can just copy the code over and giving all the context in like from legal parties clear, and we agreed like with the maintainers and the governance committee. And that probably would even break the build, but given it's on a separate branch, it doesn't matter. Then we can have small PRs, each one trying to solve a particular issue. So probably like clean up the comments and make sure the copyright information, the header, everything is correct. And then we can like have some clean up and make sure everything compiles. We update the solution and build, and then we do some integration. And we have to figure out the version. I think the version should align with the OpenTelemetry like semantic convention, and not semantic, the semantic version and the general scheme. So the first release probably shouldn't be a stable version. It should be a preview version. And we can probably bake it and ship it together for the metrics release, which is end of this year. So which means the existing Microsoft ASP.NET repo will still be there. And I have to work with the Microsoft folks to build a plan that eventually we can deprecate this and point people to OpenTelemetry. But after we clean up all the code, everything works in that branch and CI/CD all works, we can merge the branch back to main. Instead of squash all the commits, we can keep all the commits, so we have the full history, what we changed since the donation. And whether we do a test release, I think we can simply catch a metrics release trend to do that.
Why should it be tied to the metrics release? Is like
you don't have to. It's just saving some energy.
Okay.
Like just for this particular component, I think it wouldn't make sense for us to just practice another release.
Okay, I don't see any issues. I have one comment about like if we are anyway investing like some time on this, we could consider upgrading the actual telemetry module to use the new activity source API as opposed to doing the existing one. It need not be the first step, but like if you are like spending some time getting it part of OpenTelemetry, we should do it the right recommended way rather than the legacy way. But it can be like a after the first release thing, like definitely something we should be doing.
Yeah, and it can happen at stage G. You see, like from A, B, C, D, E, F, it's all like minor changes.
Yes.
And at stage G, we need to make some decision here, like which approach we're taking. And I expect we probably want to do some major changes because that code was very old. It probably not targeting the latest API that we want people to use.
Hey guys, I joined a little late. It's kind of similar to what Sijo is saying. I forget exactly what that code does, but there's some things it does. So in our ASP.NET instrumentation, we have to like check, if we're using custom propagators, then we create a new activity. We have to add in support for baggage. So I was kind of thinking about the idea of keeping it separate. There's pros and cons to that. If it was included, then we could streamline all of that, that could participate in the SDK and the APIs, baggage propagation and the default propagator, which might be kind of nice for customers that are using OpenTelemetry. For people that just want to use, this specific thing as it is, that would be the con for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we can leave that conversation at stage G. Just finish the previous steps, and then we can decide what's the next step.
Cool.
But like, people feel like this outline, like the steps make sense, and I can help on step at least A, B, C. I probably don't have like permission to set up the CI. But I believe I can fork a branch and copy the code and just like bring all the context there, so later people can see the history. I can cover A, B, C, and if people think I should cover D, I'm happy to do that as well. And E probably as well.
You definitely need that before the CA allows you to merge. If you enable the CA checks for the new branch as well, it will fail unless the sanity checks and stylings are fixed. I think including the copyright part, so that all would be like required before the CA would be green.
Yeah.
I'm happy to help out too, Riley, if you need it.
Okay, so I'll kick it off, and once I finish the I'll need your guys' help to review and being able to merge. I think I can just merge to that branch after I got approval from you, and once I think my part is done, I'll notify everyone here so you can pick it up from me.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, thanks everyone. That covered my topic.
So while we are at the same topic, so there was some changes which we did, as in Michael did last week to the ASP.NET telemetry correlation. So when you like lift it, would it be like from the latest snapshot or would it be from the last time we released?
It's from the latest.
Master or main, okay.
It will include Michael's change.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Let's move to the next one. So I created an issue a few minutes back, just trying to get some feedback from the community. It's about the Matrix API, which is part of the .NET and is about to be stable released in a couple of maybe 3 months. So please go through the issue, but I'll just summarize. So all the instruments, I'm using Counter as an example here, has multiple overloads to supply attributes, and it's called like attributes are called tags in the .NET. So there are like 3 overloads which allow up to 1 dimension, 2 dimension, and 3 dimension. These APIs do not require like anything to be allocated on the heap. You can just see like it takes 1, 2, 3 parameters. So if you need to pass more than 3, then you have like 2 options. One is to do the params option, which would mean like an arrays and allocated here. And then there is another option, which is to like allocate it somewhere yourself and provide a read-only span to it. So obviously, like these overloads are the fastest in terms of no allocation. So if you are like within the 3 dimension, you're good. So if you're more than that, you either pay for the allocation or you have to do some extra work to avoid that allocation. So trying to see like what's the 3 was a number which was just like out of random picked, considering it takes time to, or .NET team cannot just add like 50 or 100. So they just picked like the minimal, which is 3 is what they picked. So if there is a feedback from the community and like other APM vendors that 3 is not going to be like sufficient, or let's say that we come up with a number like 8 is the most common one, we want to let the .NET team know about that. And timing wise, if we let them know by end of this week, if there is a good enough reason that there are like maybe like 7 or 8 is required even for OpenTelemetry scenarios and for other APM vendors, then there is a very good chance that it can be made part of the .NET 6. But it's not really required to be part of .NET 6. It will just make like life easier for folks who are using .NET 6. They don't have to do any extra workaround. So if there is not enough need as of today, it's totally fine. We will revisit this, and it's an additive change to the .NET API, so it can be added anytime in the future, like .NET 7, 8, 9, 10, whenever. So basically, the ask is if you are like an APM vendor, or if you are running like Matrix in production right now, let us know like what is the typical number of dimensions you use. Is it under 3? Then good, no need of anything. If it's more than 3, then please comment what is the expected number, not the max number of dimensions which you see, like, but what is the like 90th or 99th percentile, like most common scenario. I did try to poke the semantic conventions from OpenTelemetry itself, which talks about the attributes. It's still like very early stage, as in it's marked experimental. It hasn't been updated to the new APIs yet, but and it does not explicitly say the number of attributes. It says that these are the attributes, only like one is marked as required or recommended. Like pretty much everything else is like optional. And the list which I shared is for HTTP and RPC calls. It looks to me, right, it would be around 5 to 8 based on the semantic convention. It's still experimental, but based on the based on whatever information is available in the semantic convention. So for me, it looks like OpenTelemetry's typical use case would require anywhere between 5 to 8 dimensions. So if you are like an APM vendor or you have a metric use case in your company, please comment here to let us know, and please make sure to do that by end of this week so we can try to see if this can be done in .NET 6 timeframe. Otherwise, we'll come back and do it and target the next train from .NET, which will be like .NET 7 or 8.
Yeah, I see. Is that possible that we seek some help from the metrics sake and also from the maintainers in other repo? I think we probably want some alignment. For example, if .NET is saying we got magical number 7, Java is saying we got 8, then it doesn't seem to be well aligned. At least some confusion.
Okay.
And also, I think the semantic convention is a very good point. For example, the semantic convention mentioned many things can be optional, but I think for typical like instrumentation library like ASP.NET Core, you don't know what the customer would want. So I would assume you're going to report everything that is mentioned in the semantic convention, although it's not required. So in this way, I would just for sake of safety, I would pick 7, 8, whichever number would feel better. But my argument would be like anything that is 3 or 4 seems to be too small.
Okay, yeah, I would share this in the metrics SIG as well. Like we have like Thursday, there is a meeting in metrics. So I'll share it there and I'll like share the link to this issue in the Slack channel right away, so people have like some time to read through it. But I just don't know like whether every language has like this readily span concept or like the allocation. So I'll just share, like hopefully people would be able to share some feedback. Yeah, and like for people like Michael who use like metrics in production, and for Alan, like if you know from your company what is a typical thing, please comment here as well. So for .NET, there is a timeline, like there's a deadline. We want it really soon. Like Java, Python, they may not have the same deadline as ours because they're not tied to the language itself. So yeah, but I'll still ask the engineers group and metrics to see if anyone has comments there.
Yeah, and just to make it clear, like if .NET ships with for example, by default up to 4 dimensions, you will have allocation free from the API. And later, based on the feedback in .NET 7, they decided they're going to change the number from 4 to 8. Then all the existing customers who have already instrumented using the API, all they need is just to recompile the code. They don't have to change any code. But if they're trying to do the assembly binding, like they take the latest version of the .NET assembly, I think they would still use the params version.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't verified it, but it's quite likely be the case.
Yeah, so if your application compiled with the current .NET 6 preview and you use 5 dimensions, if you take the new version, which .NET team gave more flexibility, like they make that allocation free, I believe you have to recompile your code. If you take the binary, you will still bind to the params. And that makes me a little bit worried because I think the instrumentation library is shaped as a binary form. So in this way, like there are application developer, there are instrumentation library, there are Rs like OpenTelemetry authors, and the separation of the responsibility makes me worry that taking those dependency and make sure everyone recompiles and ship a new package is going to take much longer time.
Okay. All right. If there are no questions on this one, I'll just move to the last topic. So just sharing update on the 1.2 Alpha 2, which I will be pushing it to next week. I did some perf testing last week, and like there is a significant amount of perf overhead today. So I'm trying to refactor the code, which would allow us to reduce all the logs in the hot path, because we currently have at least 2 logs in the hot path. One for finding out which aggregator to pick. And second is, once you have the right aggregator, then you take another log to do the actual mathematical operation of sum or histogram calculation. And there is also allocation in the hot path, which is, there are 2 allocations. One is whenever there is a metric being recorded, we get the number and a read-only span of key value pairs. So the first thing which based on the current implementation, is we use a thread local storage, and the thread local storage has a pre-allocated key value pair array of up to 3, matching the .NET 3 magic number. We try to point the array to the read-only span, and we do an in-memory or in-place sorting. Then we use it as a key to do the lookup in the dictionary. So up to this point, there is no like fresh allocation. There is only a thread local thing, but there is sorting. But after that, if the key is not found, we have to like copy the keys from the read-only span to somewhere so that it can be used as a key to the dictionary. So that's one allocation. And second is, if the aggregator does not exist, we allocate a new brand new aggregator, which is a second allocation. So I don't know like how much I would be able to optimize by end of next week, but I'm going to target the aggregator part, which seems to me like can be easily pre-allocated. So if you expect to support like 1,000 time series per instrument, we can allocate 1,000 of them in the very beginning. And we can, I'm also modifying the aggregators to be just structs, not classes. It's a bit harder because it's currently like implementing an interface. So even if I just make it struct, it won't really help because of the interface it's implementing. It's sometimes boxed. So I'm just trying to find what is the best way to balance. So 2 aspects to solve. One is try to avoid the dictionary and explicit log, and second is avoid the allocations in the aggregator itself and avoid the log. So I'll be focusing mostly on the second part, but it looks like it would require a good amount of refactoring. So it would be unlikely that we should not be spending like too much time writing the Prometheus exporter, which was one of the things which we planned in Alpha 2, because it would be like a lot of rewrites after the exporter structure changes. So I'll share like some PRs later, and hopefully target next week to do the Alpha 2 release. That aside, there is no other update yet. Victor merged the PR for histogram. So even though it was not originally in the plan, it's good that we'll get like 1 more instrument support. It's already merged and it will be part of the Alpha 2 release. So when Victor is on vacation this week, so when he's back early next week, we'll try to see whether we can do the mini version of views along with other refactorings, because as of now, the views will be touching the exact same place where we are trying to optimize both. So it will be a lot of collision. So we'll try to see if we can minimize that and do the minimal view thing, which we discussed last week as part of the Alpha 2, and do a full-blown view much later. Okay. I already did like a couple of refactoring, which reduced some allocation, but I don't think that's good enough. So we'll keep iterating on that until we reach a state where we shouldn't be taking any logs in the hot path, and we shouldn't be doing any unnecessary allocations. We might not be able to do the 0 log thing for 2 reasons. One is we need support from .NET API change for anything more than 3. And most likely we'll still need to allocate some key values in the heap, because the incoming API is already giving us the read-only span, which we cannot use for like any storage. So we have to do that allocation, but that should be it. Like nothing more than that should be the goal. So I'll see how much I will achieve by Alpha 2. If not, like we'll just do whatever we have in Alpha 2, which should at least cover the aggregator part. Yeah, I mean, I will definitely be pinging folks for questions and suggestions on feedback as soon as I send them out.
With the introduction of the histogram support, it might make sense to change the ASP.NET Core instrumentation I did to actually generate the
histogram. Yeah,
I think the duration metric.
Oh, I think you just added the request count, so we can add request count and response time leveraging the histogram, right?
Okay, you want to keep you think the request count is valuable for now?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the spec. I think it asks about two metrics. Okay, one.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's
it's
like
actually active requests and duration. Okay, so it still to one. I think in the new world it would be a histogram, not a value recorder. Active requests. Okay, this will be a bit tricky because there is no up-down counter in .NET API. I think I should be writing that as an issue because, like, even though the OpenTelemetry API spec has 7 instruments, the up-down counter and the async version of that is not part of the .NET API, and there is a reason why .NET did not include that, at least in the initial version. It's because the typical use case of this instrument, the up-down counter, is to measure things like queue size or active requests. And in .NET, there are tools like .NET Counters and Visual Studio, which can like enable metrics on the fly to a running process. So it can just like turn on some Visual Studio tool or a counter. It can start seeing the numbers from that. So for the active requests, if you do not like start from the very beginning, we wouldn't have any idea about what is the current number of active requests because we lost the initial updates. We are starting like somewhere in the middle. The only thing which the API gives is how much the number is increasing or decreasing, since we don't know like what is the base on which it is operating. So the OpenTelemetry API is moving ahead with that, but .NET decided we'll wait for some feedback before we introduce such an instrument, because the .NET tools will not know what to display for, what is the default aggregation that .NET tools would be doing for such instruments. So we'll not be able to do that, but I want to see like whether we have some alternates than this one, like, because the counter API cannot be used because there is no way it can go down, it can only go up. So I'll have to like do some research and see what is the best way to get back. Maybe we can.
Would a gauge not work in the?
Yeah, gauge is like there is a thing called asynchronous gauge, so that should allow us to use that. Yeah, but if that's the case, like we need to wait for the SDK to actually support the gauge instrument. So we can, like as you said in the beginning, we can like get rid of the counter and just do the duration. Now that we support histogram, so that should be the right thing to do right now. And when we decide or when we add the gauge, we can bring back the counting thing to count the number of records.
Okay.
It's interesting, like why we don't have a count of records. I believe the reason is we can derive it from the duration, because
yeah, the
histogram has a count. Okay, so we should be able to know the count of records from that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so that should be good enough. Right? Let's use that. I have to check whether like the SDK actually enables histogram. We enabled the aggregator. I'll check whether the actual pipeline is connecting histogram instrument to the right aggregator. So that I'll check and let you know. If it's not, it should be like very small PR to make it happen. And I don't expect any changes in the instrumentation based on the refactor. They'll be purely against the .NET API, for which there is no change. So the only change is going to be in the aggregator store / the actual aggregator. So there would be some changes in the interface which exporters are seeing. But yeah, it should not affect any instrumentations per se.
Cool. Yeah, and I think I said that I would add the HTTP client instrumentation too. But
yeah, that should also be unblocked given its duration.
I should be able to land that in the next day or two.
Okay. Yeah.
Because
I mean that's the thing which can happen in parallel without any conflict. The instrumentations can like happen like really parallel without any interruption with the actual SDK work. Yeah. The exporter would require some change because right now we are giving like a list. I just put it inside the batch. I just borrowed it from the tracing and logging the batch thing. I think Michael or like Riley wrote that thing. But it's not using the batch in the right way. It still like creates an actual list. So I'll need to like create a new batch which knows how to like walk through the list of active time series, and then give that as the input to the exporter. So there would be like some changes. I did that like already, but then I realized it's like really big refactor, like huge. Like went beyond my like reasonable limit. So I'm like taking it step by step. So I made like 1 merge last Friday. There will be like a couple more this week. And hopefully by end of next week, we should be able to bring the performance to a much better number. And after that, we'll address rest of the instruments and other things. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, I don't see anything here. So yeah, I wanted to ask, like, if anyone has some time, please look at the PR in the contrib repos. I already left some comments. Maybe like since we have plenty of time left, let me just quickly open it. I really want to ask folks one question about this instrumentation. I left a comment and probably like in the multiple comments which overwrote it, it got lost. So okay, right here. So for all the instrumentations which we currently have, which are instrumenting a library which produces the legacy, the diagnostic source way of activity. So Quartz is an example of such thing. So the part which I was having confusion is about the property fetcher thing. So let me show exactly what I mean. So like in all of the instrumentations, we don't like cast the payload into exception. We use the fetcher to reflectively read the exception from the payload. However, this is seeming to be doing just a cast. I don't know whether it works, so I'm just happy to hear like if this is a right approach or not. I haven't spent enough time understanding this. So if Michael or Alan, if you know whether this approach would work as opposed to using the property fetcher, that would be helpful. I did mention
on the source that it's listening to.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of them fire on exception, some of them just stop, and then it's a property on that event. So we'd have to look at what is this hooked up to, something inside of Quartz.
Okay, but even if it is doing like stop or like a separate event, would casting from the payload work generally? Like because like this is a payload which we get it probably an anonymous object or something, and we are trying to extract the exception from that just by casting it. So
It works as long as that's what it is. It's not an array or some.
Okay.
Yeah,
So if you know,
it's not going to work generally speaking, but I think Michael's point, it might be an exception. I think there's basically a write method off of diagnostic source, and you just on exception. I don't think it's like a standard thing. It's like based off of just like the name.
It's just a convention. Yeah, it just ends. The name ends with like dot exception at the very end. So we treat it as a convention. Okay, so the only way to know whether this is the right way is to look at the actual place where the write event is happening and see if they are indeed passing an exception as is. If they are passing it as like something else, then like we need to use a fetcher approach. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, pretty much this PR looks good for me, but I didn't knew about. In fact, even the stop activity and start activity was initially doing a cast. But then I left a comment like whether it works, but then in the subsequent commits it got changed. So either it didn't work or the author just changed it because I commented. So I don't know which one is the case. Yeah, but like overall it looks good and it has tests and like readme, again, pretty much everything we need. So if you have like cycles, please help review this PR. And there is another ask which we discussed like 2 weeks back about migrating all the, at least to begin with, the extensions package. I haven't got time to do that. So if anyone has cycles, if you can do like the lift and shift from the main repo to this repo, and also like few other things are like just renaming the packages to be like remove the code. So I'll create an issue here and see if there is anyone who can help with that. So maybe there are folks who are trying to help. This might be like a very small thing for them to do. So I'll create a couple of issues to see if anyone wants to work on that. All right, I don't have any other topics, so we'll see again next week. So there are no releases this week. I will be updating the milestone to reflect that the release will be on the next Friday. Okay, thank you everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sijo. Thanks everyone.